So, how does a whole new academic field get started? It doesn't just appear out of thin air. It often starts with one person's really interesting journey. And today, that's what we're going to look at. The story of a scholar who, by chasing a problem from the printing press all the way to the pixel, helped create a whole new science for understanding our digital world.
You're not going to believe this, but our story about the future, about computational social science, actually starts right here, over 100 years ago, with a humble farm newspaper. I know it seems like a really strange place to start, but trust me, it's the perfect setup for the digital revolution that was just around the corner.
Okay, so the person at the heart of all this is Stuart Shulman. He didn't start his career as some tech whiz or a computer scientist. Nope. He was a political historian, and he was totally fascinated by how public opinion got shaped and mobilized back in America's progressive era.
And if you look at his path, it's pretty traditional, right? He was trained to analyze old text, to figure out political movements by digging through dusty old documents. His early work was all about how rural newspapers shaped policy. In every single way, he was a scholar of ink and paper.
And then, well, everything changed. The internet exploded onto the scene, and it created a problem that literally no one in government was ready for. See, when agencies propose new rules, they're required by law to ask for public comment. All of a sudden, those comments weren't just trickling in my mail, they were an absolute flood of emails and web forms, coming in by the hundreds of thousands.
They called this new world e-rulemaking. And the idea was simple enough, but the fallout was massive. I mean, how could a small team of government workers possibly read and analyze this tidal wave of digital feedback? This wasn't just a tech problem. It was a potential crisis for democracy itself.
Just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, get this. When the USDA was creating its National Organic Program, it got over 300,000 public comments on the proposed rules. Think about that. One government agency, one single rule, and a mountain of text. How on earth do you find the good ideas buried in that giant haystack? And this is where the real danger was. The very technology that was supposed to give more people a voice was now threatening to just drown everyone out. If agencies couldn't actually process all that feedback, public input would just become meaningless noise. This wasn't just some inconvenience. It was a fundamental problem that democracy had to figure out how to solve.
So, solving this meant building a bridge. It was going to take a new kind of partnership between two academic worlds that honestly barely even spoke the same language at the time.
On one side, you had the political scientists like Shulman. They were asking the big why questions. Is this process fair? Is it really democratic? And then on the other side, you had computer scientists asking the how questions. How can we find patterns in this mess? How do we even manage all this data? It's like they were both staring at the same mountain, just from completely different sides.
But getting these two groups to actually work together, that wasn't so easy. Academic fields can be like their own little silos. And back then, most political scientists just didn't have the tech skills for these new kinds of challenges. Shulman was one of the few who was really trying to break down those walls.
And here's why this work was just so important. This quote from a USDA official talking about that massive organic foods rule just nails it. The goal wasn't just about managing data. It was about making people feel like they were actually heard. It was about building trust and really strengthening that bond between a government and the people it serves. That's what was really on the line here.
So to do that, this new team of researchers couldn't just sit around and write academic papers. No way! They had to build things. They had to create actual practical tools that they could put right into the hands of the people writing these regulations.
So they started breaking the big problem down into smaller ones. Could you get a computer to automatically spot thousands of identical form letters? Or could it figure out who the different stakeholder groups were? What about clustering comments into the main themes? Or even better, could it find and summarize the most important persuasive arguments? These were the real hands-on questions they were trying to answer.
And this work actually led to real software. They built programs like QDAP and the Coding Analysis Toolkit to help social scientists systematically analyze huge amounts of text. Eventually, all this work led to the big idea of a rule writer's workbench, and even a spin-off company, TextStifter, to get these tools out to more people.
And this is the huge shift in thinking. What began as a practical problem for the government ended up sparking a revolution in how people thought. For really the first time, social scientists could look at text not just as something you read, but as a massive data set that you could analyze. Essentially, words became data.
This whole shift, driven by a scholar who started his career with old farm newspapers, did more than just solve a government problem. It actually helped give birth to an entirely new field of study.
And that field today is known as computational social science. It's the ultimate combination of those two worlds we saw earlier, using the power of computers to ask and answer really fundamental questions about human society, about politics, about behavior, all at a scale that was just impossible before. So Shulman's journey from the farm press to pixels left a huge mark. He founded an academic journal, he built open source software, he trained a whole new generation of students, and he pioneered this model for how academics and government can actually work together. He helped lay the critical groundwork for this entire new field of science.
And that brings us to today. The early pioneers of this field, they tackled that first big data flood from the early internet. But now we're facing a whole new world of social media, disinformation, and huge debates about content moderation. The problems have changed. They're way more complex now. Which kind of makes you wonder, right? What are the problems the next generation will need to solve? And what new sciences will they end up creating?